Hi, you've clicked onto today's tropical tidbit for Sunday. Over here in the Indian Ocean resides the biggest story in the tropics right now. Tropical cyclone Funzo, centered over here off of the coast of Mozambique, which is over here. Madagascar is over here for reference. And this thing has been sitting in the same general area for the last couple of days, and thus upwelling is probably becoming a problem. When these things sit in the same spot for a while, they can churn up colder water beneath them and cause problems for themselves. And there is a nice ring of convection around the center right now, which may be trying to redevelop, but the storm in general does look weaker than it was a couple of days ago, though that's not necessarily great news for Mozambique, as these areas have probably been getting incredible amounts of rain as this thing has just been sitting here under weak steering currents, and this will probably be starting to drift southward during the next few days. These are the model runs for it over here. You can see bring it generally south right between the gauntlet of Africa and Madagascar here. There were a couple of scary runs. You can see some of them still curve it towards Mozambique. The European had this curving into southern Mozambique just a couple of runs ago, but they are starting to shift a little more offshore, which is good news for them, but they still have reasons to be nervous, and either way you slice it, there's going to be flooding rain potential for all of these areas along the coastline here, and the southern half of the country is going to be getting whacked from this storm over the next several days, so we will be watching that very closely for them. And we're going to switch gears here real quick and talk real briefly about the upcoming Atlantic hurricane season, which is still quite a ways away, several months off. But you can see here what the current water temperature anomalies look like. I'll zoom this out a little bit. You can see the La Nina is continuing out here in the Central Pacific, starting to warm up a little bit in the eastern part of the equatorial Pacific, and this overall signal will probably start moving back towards neutral as we get into the springtime here, but we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. We might even get a weak El Nino this summer, depending on how things develop, but the models will have a better handle on that once we get into the springtime. But over here in the Atlantic, overall water temperatures, if you average this out, fairly close to normal and neutral over here in the southwest Atlantic and the tropics, certainly cooler than they were during the last couple of winters and spring times when we had blazing hot record temperatures over here in the tropical Atlantic. Not seeing that this year, which is typical for a multi-year La Nina. Once you get the La Nina out here for a long time, you start taking a whole lot of heat out of the tropics because of this cold water cooling the air that circulates around the globe, and eventually all the tropical waters start cooling down, and we can't expect record temperatures to remain over here in the tropics for more than a couple of years. And last year was a big exception, having the second year also being record warmth, but we're not going to see that this year. However, if we look at this year relative to similar multi-year La Ninas that we were coming out of during positive AMOs, we find that we're actually running a good half a degree Celsius or more above normal in the Western Hemisphere warm pool in the Caribbean and Southwest Atlantic areas at this time of year. You can see down here 2009, 2000, 56, and 51 are all the years in here, probably all going to be decent analog years for this upcoming season. And some of these were pretty inactive. 2009, 56 and 51 all had a fairly small amount of storms and strong storms overall, but with this kind of a signal in here, we're running warmer than most of those years, which means that there is a surplus of heat content in this area of the world, which is interesting given that we had a record positive NAO in December, which strengthens the Azores high up here and strengthens the trade wind flow across the tropics and generally drastically cools the waters in the tropics, but that hasn't happened as much this year as it normally does, and we're still running above the similar years that show up down here. So this is something that, if persists, it'll be interesting to see if the heat content actually stays around through the February through April season, and if it does, that might be something to watch for increasing potential activity in this area of the world this summer, although it will be less active overall than the last couple of years and should be the least active season we've seen since 2009. There's also another thing to watch. There's cold water developing in the South Tropical Atlantic and the Gulf of Guinea, which generally promotes high pressure and sinking air down here, which forces the intertropical convergence zone farther north in its normal position, which can increase tropical activity in the tropical Atlantic during the summertime. And if this signal also persists, that will be another factor in favor of a decent amount of tropical activity, despite other things that will probably dampen this season below what we've had for the last couple of years. So just some things to watch. We still got a long ways to go here, and we'll just watch and see how these things develop during the springtime and the early summer. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.